blood was still warm when it dripped from Olivia Vaughn's nose onto the wooden floorboards of the cramped homestead kitchen, and in that moment she understood that her stepfather would kill her if she stayed another day. She had made the mistake of meeting his eyes during supper, a crime he considered an act of defiance that warranted his fist connecting with her face hard enough that she heard the bone crack before she felt the explosion of pain. Her mother had turned away, as she always did, choosing the illusion of safety over her daughter's well-being. Olivia was 19 years old in the summer of 1878, and she had survived 5 years under Herman Pritchard's roof in their homestead 15 miles outside Tulsa, Oklahoma, but tonight would be her last. She waited until the house fell silent, until Herman's snoring rattled through the thin walls and her mother's soft crying finally ceased. Her belongings fit into a single pillowcase: 2 dresses, her grandmother's Bible, the silver locket her real father had given her before the fever took him, and the money she had been hiding for 2 years in a tin buried beneath the chicken coop. $43. It might as well have been a fortune. Her face throbbed with every heartbeat, and when she caught her reflection in the darkened window, she barely recognized the swollen, crooked features staring back at her. The night air was thick and humid as she slipped out the back door, careful to avoid the third step that always creaked. She had no plan beyond putting distance between herself and Herman, no destination except away. The moon hung low and full, lighting her path across the prairie grass that whispered secrets in the wind. She walked east toward Tulsa, toward the possibility of work, toward anything that was not here. By dawn, her feet were blistered and bleeding, and the pain in her face had settled into a constant nauseating ache. The sun rose hot and merciless over the Oklahoma plains, promising another scorching day. She kept walking, using her shawl to shield her face from the glare, until she finally saw the outskirts of Tulsa materializing through the heat shimmer like a mirage. The town was bigger than she had imagined, with actual streets and storefronts, a hotel, several saloons, and even a small newspaper office. Cowboys and cattlemen moved along the boardwalks, their spurs jingling with each step. Wagons creaked past, stirring up dust that coated everything in a fine, gritty layer. Olivia kept her head down, suddenly aware of how she must look with her face swollen and discolored, her dress wrinkled and dusty from the long walk. She found a public well and drew water, drinking deeply before gently washing her face. The cold water stung, but it helped reduce some of the swelling. An elderly woman passing by stopped and stared, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "Child, what happened to you?" the woman asked, her voice gentle. Olivia hesitated, then simply said, "I need work. Do you know anyone who is hiring?" The woman studied her for a long moment, taking in the bruised face, the desperate eyes, the small bundle of possessions. "The boarding house on 3rd Street needs help. Mrs. Winters runs it. Tell her Dorothy sent you." She paused, then added, "And tell her you need a safe place to stay." Olivia thanked her and followed the directions to a 2-story wooden building with a painted sign that read Winters Boarding House. She climbed the steps and knocked, her heart hammering against her ribs. The woman who answered was in her 50s, with gray, streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes took in Olivia's injuries immediately, and her expression hardened. "I am looking for work," Olivia said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Dorothy said you might need help. I can cook, clean, mend, wash, and I work hard. I need a place to stay, and I will work for room and board plus whatever wage you think is fair." Mrs. Winters stepped back and gestured for Olivia to enter. The interior was clean and simple, with stairs leading to the 2nd floor and a parlor to the right. The smell of bread baking drifted from somewhere in the back. "Who did that to your face?" Mrs. Winters asked bluntly. "My stepfather. I left last night. I am not going back." "Good. You should not." Mrs. Winters crossed her arms. "I have 6 rooms I rent to working men, mostly cowboys and ranch hands. They need 3 meals a day, clean sheets weekly, and their laundry done. The work is hard and the hours are long. I can pay you $3 a week plus a small room in the back and your meals. You would start immediately. $3 a week was not much, but with room and board included, Olivia could save almost all of it. I will take it. Thank you. Come on then, let me show you your room and get you settled. Then we will see about getting some cold compresses on that face. Mrs. Winters led her through the boarding house, pointing out the kitchen, the dining room, and finally a tiny room off the back hallway that held a narrow bed, a small dresser, and a window overlooking the back alley. To Olivia, it looked like paradise. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of work and exhaustion. Olivia rose before dawn to start the stove and prepare breakfast for the boarders, then spent the day washing, mending, and preparing the next meal. The men who stayed at the boarding house were mostly polite, occasionally flirtatious, but Mrs. Winters tolerated no impropriety under her roof, and everyone knew it. Olivia kept her head down and her eyes on her work, still jumping at sudden noises, still flinching when men raised their voices, her nose healed crooked. With a small bump where the bone had broken, but the bruising faded and the swelling went down. She began to settle into the rhythm of her new life, began to believe that maybe Herman would not come looking for her, that maybe she could actually build something here in Tulsa. 3 weeks after her arrival, a new boarder checked in. Olivia was in the kitchen preparing supper when she heard Mrs. Winters talking to someone in the front parlor. A man's voice responded, low and calm, with a slight drawl that marked him as a Texan. When Olivia carried the supper dishes into the dining room a few minutes later, she saw him sitting at the table, and something in her chest tightened. He was tall and lean, probably in his mid-20s, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore the standard uniform of a working cowboy, worn denim pants, a faded blue shirt, scuffed boots, and a hat that he had hung on the back of his chair. There was a quiet confidence in the way he held himself, but nothing arrogant about it. When Olivia entered with the dishes, she kept her eyes down as she served the meal. "Thank you kindly," he said, and she nodded without looking up. Mrs. Winters introduced him as Tobias Whitmore, recently hired at the Diamond Creek Ranch about 10 miles north of town. He would be staying Monday through Friday, heading back to the ranch on weekends. As Olivia moved around the table serving the other boarders, she was acutely aware of Tobias watching her, though he said nothing more. It was after the meal, when she was clearing the plates, that he finally spoke to her again. "What happened to your nose?" he asked quietly, so the others would not hear. Olivia stiffened, her hands tightening on the stack of plates. "It is nothing." "It is not nothing. Someone hurt you." She finally met his eyes, intending to tell him to mind his own business, but something in his expression stopped her. There was no prurient curiosity there, no judgment, just genuine concern. Still, she could not talk about it, not with a stranger. She looked away quickly. "Look at me," he said, his voice still quiet but firm. She froze, her breath catching. Those were the words Herman used right before he struck her, his way of asserting dominance, of reminding her that she was beneath him. Her hand instinctively went to her face and she took a step back. Tobias immediately held up his hands. "I am sorry. I did not mean to frighten you. I just meant you do not have to be afraid to look at people. Whoever hurt you, whoever made you think you had to keep your eyes down, they were wrong." Olivia stared at him, this stranger who seemed to see too much. "I need to finish my work," she managed and hurried back to the kitchen. But over the following days, she found herself noticing Tobias in ways she tried not to acknowledge. He was different from the other boarders. He read books in the evening instead of going to the saloons. He always thanked her for the meals, always offered to help carry heavy things without making a show of it. And he kept trying in small ways to get her to look at him. "Those biscuits were the best I have ever had," he said one morning at breakfast. "Look at me so I know you heard the compliment." She glanced up briefly, meeting his eyes for just a second before looking down again. "There she is," he said softly. And there was such warmth in his voice that she felt something flutter in her chest. Another morning she accidentally spilled coffee while pouring his cup, the hot liquid splashing onto the table. She jumped back, her heart racing, expecting anger, expecting violence. "It is all right," Tobias said immediately, standing and moving the cup away. "No harm done. Happens to everyone." He grabbed a cloth and helped her clean it up, as natural as breathing. And when she started to apologize, he shook his head. "No need, but look at me when I tell you it is truly fine. I need you to believe me." She forced herself to meet his eyes and saw nothing but kindness there. "Thank you," she whispered. "Anytime," he said, and smiled at her. Gradually, over the course of weeks, she found it easier to look at him. He never made demands, never raised his voice, never did anything to make her feel threatened. Instead, he seemed determined to show her that not all men were like Herman. He told her stories about growing up on a ranch in Texas, about learning to break horses and rope cattle, about the time he got thrown into a water trough by an ornery bull. He made her laugh, something she had not done in years. "There it is," he said the first time she laughed at one of his stories, his whole face lighting up. "I was starting to think you forgot how." "I almost did," she admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. "Well, I will just have to remind you more often then." Mrs. Winters noticed, of course. She noticed everything. One afternoon while they were washing dishes together, she said, "That Whitmore boy is sweet on you." Olivia felt her cheeks heat. "He is just being kind." "He is being more than kind, and you know it. Question is, how do you feel about him?" Olivia did not know how to answer. She had not allowed herself to think about feelings, about possibilities. She was still learning how to breathe without fear, how to exist without waiting for the next blow to fall. "He is a good man," Mrs. Winters continued. "I have been running this boarding house for 12 years, and I know how to read people. He is steady, hard-working, and he looks at you like you hang the moon. You could do a lot worse." "I am not looking for anything," Olivia said quietly. "I just want to be safe." "Safe is good, but eventually you might want more than that. And when you do, someone like Tobias Whitmore does not come along every day." That evening, after supper was cleared and the other boarders had dispersed to their rooms or to the saloons, Tobias found Olivia on the back porch. She had taken to sitting out there in the evenings when the heat of the day finally broke, enjoying the brief coolness and the relative quiet. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She gestured to the other chair, and he sat, stretching out his long legs with a satisfied sigh. "Long day?" she asked. "Always. But I do not mind hard work." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Can I ask you something personal?" She tensed, but nodded. "The man who broke your nose, was it your husband?" "No, my stepfather, Herman Pritchard." The name tasted bitter in her mouth. "Are you afraid he will come looking for you?" "Sometimes. But Tulsa is big enough that I can disappear if I need to, and he probably does not care enough to bother." Tobias turned to look at her, his expression serious. "If he does come, if he ever tries to hurt you again, you tell me, all right? I will make sure he does not lay another hand on you." "Why would you do that? You barely know me." "Because no one deserves to be hurt like that, and because I do want to know you, Olivia, if you will let me." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw nothing but sincerity in his face. "I do not know how to do this," she admitted. "I do not know how to trust people." "Then we will take it slow, but I need you to do something for me." He leaned forward slightly. "I need you to stop looking at the ground when we talk. Look at me whenever you want, whenever you feel like it, not because someone is demanding it, but because you choose to. Can you do that?" The words were so different from Herman's commands, so opposite in intent and feeling, that Olivia felt something crack open inside her chest. "I can try. That is all I ask." From that night forward, things shifted between them. It was subtle at first, small moments that added up to something bigger. Tobias started staying at the boarding house on weekends instead of going back to the ranch, finding excuses to be near Olivia, to talk to her, to learn her story. She told him about her real father, who had been gentle and kind, who had died when she was 14 and left her and her mother vulnerable. She told him about Herman, about the years of walking on eggshells, about finally reaching the breaking point the night he broke her nose. "I was so afraid," she confessed one evening. They had fallen into the habit of meeting on the back porch after her work was done, sitting in the growing dark and talking for hours. "When I left that night, I had no idea if I would survive. I just knew I could not stay." "You are one of the bravest people I have ever met," Tobias said. "Do you know that?" She shook her head. "I do not feel brave. I feel like I'm still running." Bravery is not about not being afraid. It is about doing what needs to be done even when you are terrified. He reached over and took her hand, and she let him. His palm was calloused from rope and reins, but his touch was gentle. "You saved yourself, Olivia. That takes more courage than most people ever have to find." She looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face. In the moonlight, his features were softer, younger. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why are you not married? You are handsome and kind and hard-working. Surely there were girls back in Texas." He smiled a little. "There were a few who were interested, but I never felt that spark, you know? That feeling like someone sees you, really sees you, and you see them back. I wanted that, even if it meant waiting." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "I think maybe I was waiting for you." Her breath caught. "Tobias, you do not have to say anything. I am not asking for promises or commitments. I just wanted you to know how I feel, that I care about you, that I want to court you properly if you are willing." "What if I am too broken?" she whispered. "What if Herman damaged me too much?" "You are not broken. You are healing. There is a difference." He squeezed her hand gently. "And I am a patient man. We can go as slow as you need." She looked at him then, held his gaze, and for the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt something like hope unfurling in her chest. "I would like that. The courting, I mean." His smile could have lit up the whole prairie. "Yeah? Yeah." He brought her hand up to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "Then I am the luckiest man in Oklahoma." The courtship that followed was unlike anything Olivia had imagined courtship could be. Tobias was patient and respectful, never pushing her beyond what she was comfortable with. On his days off, he would take her walking through Tulsa, showing her parts of the town she had not yet explored. He bought her peppermint sticks from the general store and wildflowers from the prairie. They attended a church social together, and she met some of the other ranch families who welcomed her with open kindness. Mrs. Winters watched their courtship with approval, occasionally giving Olivia advice or simply reminding her that she deserved happiness. The other boarders noticed too, and took to teasing Tobias good-naturedly about being love-struck. "You have got it bad, Whitmore," one of them said at breakfast one morning after Tobias had been caught staring at Olivia while she poured coffee. "That I do," Tobias agreed, not even embarrassed. He caught Olivia's eye and winked, and she felt her cheeks flush with pleasure. Summer turned to autumn, and the Oklahoma heat finally broke. The leaves on the scattered trees turned gold and red, and the air took on a crisp quality that made everything feel fresh and new. Olivia had been in Tulsa for 4 months, and in that time she had transformed. She stood straighter now, looked people in the eye, smiled more readily. The shadows that had haunted her eyes were fading, replaced by something brighter. And then on a cold November afternoon, Herman Pritchard walked into the boarding house. Olivia was in the dining room setting the table for supper when she heard the front door open. She glanced up automatically and her entire body went rigid. Herman stood in the doorway, bigger and meaner than she remembered, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "There you are, girl. Your mama has been worried sick." Olivia could not move, could not breathe. She was 14 again, powerless and terrified. Her hand instinctively went to her nose, to the crooked bridge that served as a permanent reminder of his violence. "You're going to pack your things and come home," Herman said, moving into the room. Enough of this foolishness." "No." The word came out barely above a whisper, but Olivia forced herself to say it again louder. "No, I am not going anywhere with you." Herman's expression darkened. "You do not get to tell me no, girl. I am your father." "You are not my father. You are the man who broke my nose for looking at you. You are the man who made my life hell for 5 years, and I will die before I go back to that house." "You ungrateful little—" Herman started forward, raising his hand, and Olivia flinched back, knocking into the table. Dishes clattered and fell. "I suggest you stop right there." The voice came from the doorway, and both Olivia and Herman turned. Tobias stood there, still in his work clothes, dusty from the trail. His expression was calm, but there was steel in his eyes, and his hand rested casually on the gun at his hip. "This does not concern you, boy," Herman snarled. "This is family business." "It concerns me when you threaten the woman I intend to marry." Tobias moved into the room, positioning himself between Olivia and Herman. "You need to leave, now." "Or what? You will shoot me in front of witnesses?" "If I have to. But I would prefer to just throw you out on your rear and tell you never to come back. So what is it going to be?" Herman glared at Tobias, clearly weighing his options. He was bigger than Tobias, probably outweighed him by 50 pounds, but Tobias was younger and had the gun. More importantly, Tobias had the look of a man who would absolutely follow through on his threat. "This is not over," Herman said, pointing at Olivia. "You belong to me, and I will get you back." "She does not belong to anyone except herself," Tobias said quietly. "Now get out." Herman stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The moment he was gone, Olivia's legs gave out and she sank into one of the dining chairs, shaking violently. Tobias holstered his gun and knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "Hey, look at me. Look at me, Olivia." She met his eyes, tears streaming down her face. "He is gone, and he is not going to hurt you again. I promise you that." "What if he comes back? What if he finds me when you're not here?" "Then we will make sure you are never without protection." He pulled her into his arms, and she buried her face against his chest, breathing in the familiar smell of leather and horses and safety. "I meant what I said about marrying you. If you will have me, I want to marry you as soon as possible. Not just to protect you, though that is part of it, but because I love you, Olivia Vaughn. I have loved you since that first night when you tried so hard to be invisible. I love your strength and your courage, and the way you have rebuilt yourself from nothing. Say you will marry me, please." She pulled back to look at him, searching his face. "You really want to marry me? Broken nose and all the damage that comes with me?" "You are not damaged, and that nose is part of your story, part of what makes you who you are. So yes, I want to marry you, all of you, every single part." "Then yes," she said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and Olivia felt something she had never expected to feel again, pure, uncomplicated joy. They were married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Tulsa. Mrs. Winters stood as witness, along with several of the boarders and ranch hands Tobias worked with. Olivia wore a new dress that Mrs. Winters had helped her sew, a simple blue cotton that brought out her eyes. Tobias wore his Sunday best, his dark hair slicked back, and his face scrubbed clean. When the preacher asked if he took Olivia to be his wife, Tobias said, "I do," with such conviction that several people in the small congregation sniffled. When it was Olivia's turn, she looked directly at Tobias and said, "I do," without a single shred of doubt. They sealed their marriage with a kiss, and as Tobias pulled her close, Olivia thought about how far she had come from that terrified girl who had run away in the night. She had found not just safety, but love, not just shelter, but home. Tobias had arranged for them to rent a small house on the outskirts of Tulsa, close enough to town for Olivia to keep working at the boarding house if she wanted, but far enough for privacy. It was a simple 2-room structure with a stone fireplace and a porch that faced west, toward the sunset. To Olivia, it was perfect. Their wedding night was gentle and patient, with Tobias taking his time to show Olivia that physical intimacy did not have to be frightening or painful. He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, whispering reassurances and endearments until she relaxed in his arms. "Look at me," he said softly, and this time the words held only love. "I want to see your eyes." She looked at him, held his gaze, and felt something inside her finally, fully heal. This was what it was supposed to be like, this trust, this tenderness, this feeling of being cherished rather than controlled. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, Tobias tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder while Olivia listened to his heartbeat beneath her ear. "I never thought I could have this," she said quietly. "I thought Herman ruined me for anything good." "He did not ruin anything. He hurt you, but he did not break you. You are the strongest person I know, Olivia Whitmore." He said her new name like a prayer, like something sacred. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how extraordinary you are." She tilted her head to look at him. "I love you. I love you too. More than I have words for." The following morning, Tobias went to the marshal's office and filed a complaint against Herman Pritchard, detailing the assault and the threats. The marshal, a grizzled man in his 60s named Tom Crawford, took the report seriously. "I know Pritchard," Marshal Crawford said, leaning back in his chair. "He has been in trouble before for fighting and drinking. I will make sure he knows that if he comes near your wife again, he will be arrested. And I will spread the word to the other ranches that he is not welcome in Tulsa." "I appreciate that, Marshal. You did right getting her away from him and marrying her. Gives her legal protection. A man cannot just claim his stepdaughter anymore once she is married to someone else." The marshal studied Tobias. "You really love her?" "More than anything." "Good. She looks like she has been through hell. She deserves someone who will treat her right." Tobias returned home to find Olivia baking bread, flour dusted across her nose and cheeks. The sight was so domestic, so perfectly normal, that he felt his chest tighten with emotion. "What is wrong?" she asked, seeing his expression. "Nothing. Everything is right. I just love you so much it hurts sometimes." She crossed the small room and wrapped her arms around him, leaving flower handprints on his shirt. "I love you too, and I am not afraid anymore. Not when I am with you. You never have to be afraid again. I promise you that." The winter of 1878 was mild by Oklahoma standards, with only a few dustings of snow and temperatures that rarely dropped below freezing. Tobias continued working at the Diamond Creek Ranch, leaving early each morning and returning at dusk, while Olivia kept their small house and continued helping Mrs. Winters at the boarding house 3 days a week. She liked the work and the extra income, and Mrs. Winters had become something like a surrogate mother to her. Christmas came and went, their first as a married couple. Tobias surprised Olivia with a new shawl he had bought from a traveling merchant, soft wool dyed a deep green. Olivia gave him a pocket watch she had saved for, silver with his initials engraved on the back. They spent Christmas Day with Mrs. Winters and some of the other boarders, eating roasted chicken and playing cards by the fire. As the new year of 1879 dawned, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She waited to tell Tobias until she was certain, until the morning sickness and missed courses made it undeniable. She chose a Sunday morning when he was still in bed, the winter sun streaming through their window. "Tobias," she said, curling up next to him, "I have something to tell you." He opened one eye, then the other, a smile already forming. "Yeah? We are going to have a baby, in the summer, I think, July or August." He sat up so fast he almost knocked her over, his eyes wide. "Really? You're sure?" "I am sure." He whooped with joy and pulled her into his arms, kissing her face, her neck, her shoulders. "We are going to have a baby. Oh God, Olivia, we are going to be parents." She laughed, caught up in his enthusiasm. "You are happy then?" "Happy? I am over the moon. I am the luckiest man alive." He pulled back to look at her, his expression suddenly serious. "Are you happy? Are you scared?" "Both," she admitted. "I am excited, but I'm also afraid. What if I do not know how to be a good mother? What if I end up like my mother, unable to protect my children?" "You will never be like that," Tobias said firmly. "You are nothing like her. You are strong and brave, and you will be an amazing mother, and you will not be alone. I will be right there with you every step of the way." She believed him. That was the miracle of it all, that after everything she had been through, she could still believe in promises and hope and happy endings. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though the summer heat made the final months uncomfortable. Olivia had to stop working at the boarding house when she got too big to comfortably move around the kitchen, but Mrs. Winters came to visit often, bringing food and gossip and practical advice about childbirth. Tobias was attentive to the point of being comical, constantly asking if Olivia needed anything, if she was comfortable, if the baby was moving. He talked to her belly every night, telling their unborn child stories about the ranch and the horses and all the things they would do together. "What if it is a girl?" Olivia asked one night, smiling at his enthusiasm. "Then I will teach her to ride and rope and shoot, same as if it was a boy. Any child of ours is going to know how to take care of themselves. Even if it is a girl. Especially if it is a girl. I want our daughters to be strong like their mother. I want them to know they do not have to be afraid of men or depend on anyone but themselves." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "You are going to be such a good father." "I'm going to try. That is all any of us can do." Their son was born on a sweltering August afternoon in 1879, after 12 hours of labor that left Olivia exhausted but triumphant. The midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Harris, placed the squalling infant in Olivia's arms and declared him healthy and strong. Tobias, who had been pacing outside like a caged animal, burst into the room the moment he was allowed. He stopped short when he saw Olivia holding their son, his expression transforming into something close to awe. "It is a boy," Olivia said, her voice hoarse but happy. "We have a son." Tobias approached slowly, as if afraid he might shatter the moment. When he finally looked down at the baby's red, wrinkled face, he made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "He is perfect. You are perfect. God, Olivia, look what we made. Do you want to hold him?" Tobias nodded, unable to speak, and carefully took the baby from her. He held his son with the same gentle competence he showed with newborn foals, supporting the tiny head and rocking slightly. "Hey there, little one. I am your daddy, and I am going to love you and protect you for as long as I live." They named him James Thomas Whitmore, after both of their fathers. James had Tobias's dark hair and Olivia's blue eyes, and from the very beginning he was a happy, easy baby. He nursed well, slept in reasonable stretches, and seemed content to observe the world with wide, curious eyes. The first few months were an adjustment. Tobias helped as much as he could, coming home from the ranch to take over so Olivia could rest, walking James around the house at night when he fussed. They learned together, making mistakes and laughing about them, supporting each other through the exhaustion and uncertainty of new parenthood. One evening when James was about 3 months old, Olivia was feeding him while Tobias prepared supper. She watched her husband move around their small kitchen, comfortable and capable, and felt a wave of gratitude so intense it was almost painful. "What are you thinking about?" Tobias asked, glancing over. "Just how different my life is now. How different I am. 2 years ago I thought I would die in that house with Herman. I thought that was all I deserved. And now look at me. I have a husband who loves me, a beautiful son, a home of my own. Sometimes it feels like a dream." Tobias set down the spoon he was holding and came to sit beside her. He put his arm around her shoulders and pressed a kiss to her temple. "It is not a dream. It is real. You are real. This family is real, and you deserve all of it and more. I do not think I will ever stop being grateful that you saw me that first night at the boarding house, that you made me look up, made me see that I could be more than what Herman told me I was. I just reminded you what was already there. You did the hard work of believing it." He looked down at James, who had fallen asleep mid-feeding, milk-drunk, and content. "And now we get to raise this little guy to know he is loved and valued and strong. We get to break the cycle." "We already have," Olivia said, and knew it was true. As James grew from an infant to a toddler, the little house on the outskirts of Tulsa felt increasingly cramped. Tobias had been saving money and had been promoted to foreman at the Diamond Creek Ranch, which came with a significant pay increase. One evening in the spring of 1881, he came home with news. "The ranch owner is selling off some parcels of land," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "He offered me first choice on a section near Silver Creek. It is good grazing land, with water and timber. We could build a real house there, Olivia, start our own ranch. It would be hard work, and it would take time to build it up, but we could do it. What do you think?" Olivia did not have to think long. She trusted Tobias completely, trusted his judgment and his work ethic. "I think it sounds like an adventure, and I think James would love growing up on a ranch." They bought the land and began construction on a house immediately. It took months of hard work, with Tobias and several of his friends from the Diamond Creek Ranch doing most of the building themselves. The house was simple but solid, with 3 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a porch that wrapped around 2 sides. There was a barn for horses and a small chicken coop. It was not fancy, but it was theirs, built with their own hands and their own money. They moved in just before James's 2nd birthday, and Olivia immediately set about making it a home. She planted a vegetable garden, hung curtains in the windows, and arranged their modest furniture with care. Tobias bought cattle and horses and began building the Whitmore Ranch from the ground up. The work was endless and exhausting, but it was also deeply satisfying. They were creating something together, building a legacy for James and whatever other children might come. Olivia discovered she had a talent for managing the ranch's finances, keeping meticulous records of expenses and income. Tobias proved to be an excellent rancher, with an instinct for cattle and horses that quickly earned him a reputation in the area. Their 2nd child, a daughter they named Eleanor Rose, was born in the spring of 1882. She was tiny and fierce from the moment she entered the world, with Tobias's gray eyes and a temper that suggested she would take no nonsense from anyone. Tobias was absolutely besotted with her, calling her his little wildflower and carrying her everywhere. "You are in trouble when she is older," Olivia teased, watching Tobias rock Eleanor to sleep one evening while James played at their feet. "Why is that?" "Because you will never be able to tell her no. She has you completely wrapped around her finger." "Well, so do you, and I do not see that as a problem," Tobias said with a grin. Life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. The children grew healthy and happy, learning to ride horses and help with chores appropriate to their ages. James was quiet and thoughtful, while Eleanor was bold and adventurous. They adored each other and their parents, and the little house rang with laughter more often than not. Olivia had not seen or heard from Herman since that day he had come to the boarding house, though occasionally she got word through Mrs. Winters about her mother. Apparently, Herman had taken to drinking more heavily after Olivia left, and their homestead was falling into disrepair. Her mother had written a letter once, delivered through Mrs. Winters, asking Olivia to come home. Olivia had read it once and then burned it. That part of her life was over, and she had no intention of reopening that door. Then, in the summer of 1884, her mother showed up at the ranch. Olivia was hanging laundry when she saw the wagon approaching. She did not recognize it at first, but as it got closer, her stomach dropped. The woman driving looked older and more worn than Olivia remembered, but it was unmistakably her mother. "Olivia," her mother said, climbing down from the wagon with difficulty, "I had to see you." Olivia did not move to help her, just stood there with a wet sheet in her hands. "Why are you here?" "Herman is dead. He got into a fight at a saloon in Tulsa 3 weeks ago and someone stabbed him. He bled out before anyone could get help." There was no emotion in her mother's voice, just flat recitation of facts. Olivia felt nothing. Not relief, not grief, not even satisfaction. Just a hollow sort of numbness. All right, thank you for telling me. I was hoping I could stay here with you, her mother continued. The homestead is being taken for debts, and I have nowhere else to go. I am your mother, Olivia. Surely you will not turn me away. The audacity of it took Olivia's breath away. This woman who had stood by while Herman terrorized her, who had chosen a violent man over her own daughter, now expected shelter and charity. No, Olivia said, her voice clear and firm. You made your choice when you let Herman hurt me and did nothing. You made your choice every day for 5 years, and now you have to live with the consequences of that choice, just like I have to live with the consequences of what he did to me. Olivia, please, I am your mother. You stopped being my mother the first time you looked away while he hit me. I built this life without you, and I do not need you now. She saw Tobias coming out of the barn, alerted by the sound of voices. He moved to stand beside her, a silent show of support. This is my family now. These are the people who love me and protect me and deserve my loyalty. You need to leave. Her mother's face crumpled, but Olivia felt no sympathy. Where will I go? I do not know and I do not care. You could try the church in Tulsa. I'm sure they have resources for widows. She turned her back and started hanging the sheet, making it clear the conversation was over. She heard the wagon pull away a few minutes later. Tobias put his hand on her shoulder, and only then did Olivia realize she was shaking. Are you all right? He asked quietly. I think so. I just keep thinking about how much she wanted me to feel guilty, how she expected me to just forget everything and take care of her. She turned to face him. I do not feel guilty. Is that wrong? No, love, it is not wrong. She made her choices, and you do not owe her anything. He pulled her into his arms, and she leaned into his strength, breathing deeply until the shaking stopped. Herman is dead, she said, the words sinking in. He is actually dead. How do you feel about that? She thought about it, really examined her emotions, relieved, not happy exactly, but relieved, like a door I did not even know was still open finally closed. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. That night, after the children were asleep, Tobias and Olivia sat on their porch and watched the sunset paint the Oklahoma sky in shades of orange and gold. Tobias held her hand, his thumb making lazy circles on her palm. You know what I realized today? Olivia said. I spent so much of my life being afraid of Herman even after I left. Afraid he would find me, afraid he would hurt me again, afraid he would somehow ruin what we had built. And now he is gone, and I am still here. I survived him, I outlasted him, and I have this beautiful life that he could never touch. You did more than survive. You thrived. You built a life and a family and a future. That takes more courage than most people ever have to find. I could not have done it without you, she said, squeezing his hand. You showed me what it means to be loved properly. You showed me that men can be kind and gentle and strong all at the same time. You saved me, Tobias. No, he said, turning to face her. You saved yourself. I just had the privilege of loving you while you did it, and I will keep loving you for the rest of my life. He kissed her then, slow and sweet, and Olivia felt the last piece of her old life finally fall away. She was free, completely, finally free. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered, and the Whitmore name became respected throughout the region. Tobias proved to be not just a skilled rancher, but also a fair employer, and they were able to hire several hands to help manage the growing operation. Olivia became known for her hospitality, often hosting gatherings for neighboring ranchers and their families. James grew into a serious, thoughtful young man who loved working with the cattle. Eleanor remained wild and free-spirited, learning to ride before most girls her age and insisting on helping with every aspect of ranch work. In 1886, Olivia gave birth to twin boys, Samuel and Daniel, who were as different as night and day despite being born minutes apart. Samuel was cautious and analytical, while Daniel was impulsive and charming. Their house was never quiet, never still. There were always children running through it, always animals to tend, always work to be done. It was exhausting and chaotic and perfect. Mrs. Winters became a regular visitor to the ranch, taking the trip from Tulsa once a month to see the children and catch up with Olivia. She had sold the boarding house a few years earlier and retired, but she remained close to the Whitmores, the nearest thing to a grandmother the children had. "You have done well for yourself," Mrs. Winters said one afternoon, watching James and Eleanor teach the twins to ride. "I remember that terrified girl who showed up at my door with a broken nose and no hope. Look at you now." "I had help," Olivia said, smiling at Tobias, who was patiently adjusting Samuel's grip on the reins. "You did. But you also had strength. Not everyone could have done what you did, Olivia. Not everyone could have started over the way you did." "I did not have a choice." "There is always a choice. You chose survival over surrender. You chose hope over despair. And you chose love over fear. Those are not easy choices." That night, after the children were finally in bed and the house was quiet, Olivia found Tobias in their bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed and pulling off his boots with a tired groan. "Long day?" she asked, closing the door behind her. "Long but good. Those twins are going to be excellent riders if they keep practicing." He looked up at her, his expression softening. "Come here." She crossed the room and sat beside him. He put his arm around her waist and pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. "Do you ever think about how far we have come?" she asked. "All the time. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and look at you sleeping beside me, and I cannot believe this is my life, that I get to love you, that we made this family together." "I feel the same way. Sometimes I still have nightmares about Herman, about that last night, but then I wake up and you are there, and the children are safe in their beds, and I remember that I am not that scared girl anymore. I am Olivia Whitmore. I am a wife and a mother and a rancher. I am strong." "You are the strongest person I know," Tobias said, turning her to face him, "and the kindest and the most beautiful, inside and out." "Even with the crooked nose?" she teased, touching the small bump self-consciously. He took her hand and kissed her fingers, then her palm, then her wrist. "Especially with the crooked nose. It is part of your story. It is proof that you survived." She kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it, all the love and gratitude and joy that filled her heart. They had been married for nearly 7 years, and somehow he still made her feel like a bride. The children grew and the ranch grew with them. James showed an aptitude for business and began helping Olivia manage the financial side of the operation. Eleanor, true to form, became an expert horsewoman and started training horses to sell to other ranches. The twins were inseparable, getting into trouble together and working together in equal measure. In the spring of 1890, James announced that he was courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a sweet girl named Anna. Olivia felt a pang at the thought of her eldest growing up and starting his own life, but she was also proud. She had raised him to be kind and respectful, to value women as equals. She had no doubt he would be a good husband. The wedding took place in the summer, a joyous celebration that brought together families from all over the region. Olivia watched James pledge his life to Anna and felt Tobias's hand slip into hers. "They remind me of us," he whispered. "They are much younger than we were, but just as certain, just as in love. That is what matters." As the years continued to pass, Olivia and Tobias aged gracefully together, their love deepening rather than fading. They became grandparents when James and Anna had their first child, a daughter they named Olivia in her honor. Eleanor eventually married a ranch hand named William, who was as wild and free as she was, and they moved to Montana to start their own spread. The twins stayed on the ranch, working alongside their father and eventually taking over more and more of the daily operations. Olivia never saw her mother again, though she heard through the grapevine that the woman had ended up in a home for indigent widows run by the church. She felt no satisfaction in that knowledge, but no guilt either. Some bridges once burned were never meant to be rebuilt. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1899, Tobias took Olivia to the spot where they had built their first house, long since expanded and renovated. They stood on the porch where they had spent so many evenings talking, where they had first become friends and then something more. 20 years, Tobias said, shaking his head in wonder. It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. I would do it all again, Olivia said, every moment, every struggle, every joy, all of it, because it brought me here, to you, to this life. Even the hard parts, even those, they made me who I am. They taught me what I am capable of. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. His hair was graying at the temples now, and there were lines around his eyes, but to Olivia he was as handsome as he had been that first night at the boarding house. I want you to know something, Tobias said seriously. I want you to know that you saved me just as much as I saved you. Before I met you, I was just going through the motions, working and living, but not really feeling anything. You taught me what it means to truly love someone. You taught me what family means. You gave me purpose and joy and a reason to be grateful every single day. So thank you, Olivia Whitmore. Thank you for looking up that night. Thank you for letting me love you. She felt tears slide down her cheeks, but they were happy tears. Thank you for telling me I could look at you whenever I wanted. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for seeing me when I could not see myself. They stood there, as the sun set, holding each other, two people who had found each other in the darkness and built something beautiful in the light. The sounds of their grandchildren playing drifted from inside the house, and somewhere a horse whinnied. It was an ordinary evening on an ordinary ranch in Oklahoma, but to Olivia and Tobias, it was everything. As the new century dawned in 1900, Olivia was 51 years old and Tobias 56. They had slowed down some, leaving more of the ranch work to their children and hired hands, but they were still active and engaged. They spent their days tending the garden, visiting with grandchildren, and enjoying the quiet companionship that came from decades of marriage. One evening in late spring, they were sitting on their porch as they had done 1,000 times before. Olivia was mending one of the grandchildren's shirts while Tobias read the newspaper. The setting sun painted everything gold, and the air smelled of grass and promise. "Do you remember what you told me that first night on Mrs. Winters's porch?" Olivia asked suddenly. "When you asked to court me?" Tobias lowered the newspaper and thought for a moment. "I said a lot of things that night. You said I was not broken, just healing, and that you were a patient man." She set down her mending and looked at him. "You were right. I was not broken. I just needed time and love to put myself back together, and you gave me both." "You put yourself back together," Tobias corrected gently. "I just held your hand while you did it." "We healed each other," Olivia said. "That is the truth of it. We saved each other." He reached over and took her hand, their fingers intertwining automatically, a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. "I love you, Olivia. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, always." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon, painting the Oklahoma sky in brilliant shades of purple and pink. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed, and a coyote called out to the gathering dark. It was the sound of home, the sound of the life they had built together from nothing but determination and love. Years later, when their grandchildren asked how they met, Olivia always told the truth. She told them about Herman and the broken nose, about running away with nothing but fear and hope. She told them about Tobias and his patient kindness, about how he had taught her to look up, to look people in the eye, to claim her own space in the world. She told them that love could heal even the deepest wounds, that it was never too late to start over, and that sometimes the greatest act of courage was simply choosing to survive. And when the grandchildren asked Tobias what he remembered most about falling in love with their grandmother, he always said the same thing. "The moment she finally looked at me without fear, that was the moment I knew she was going to be all right. And I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life making sure she never had to be afraid again." They kept their promise to each other, right up until the end. Tobias passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1912 at the age of 68, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, with Olivia holding his hand. She followed him 3 years later, dying quietly in the same bed they had shared for 36 years. Their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple stone marker that read, "Tobias and Olivia Whitmore, beloved parents and grandparents together in life and death." The ranch continued to thrive under James's management, and eventually passed to his children, and then to theirs. The Whitmore name became a fixture in Oklahoma ranching history, known for quality cattle and fair dealing. But more than that, the family was known for the story of its founders, the Cowboy and the Runaway, who had found each other in the darkness and built an empire on love and determination. Eleanor's children inherited her wildness and her strength, moving west and starting their own adventures. The twins stayed close to home, their children and grandchildren eventually spreading throughout Oklahoma and beyond, carrying the Whitmore name and the Whitmore legacy with them wherever they went. As the decades passed and the Wild West became history, the story of Tobias and Olivia Whitmore became the stuff of family legend. Each generation told it differently, adding their own embellishments, but the core remained the same. A girl who had been broken and a cowboy who had helped her heal, who had looked into each other's eyes and seen home. The crooked nose that Herman Pritchard had given Olivia when he broke it for the crime of looking at him became a symbol in the family. It represented survival and strength, the visible reminder that you could be hurt and still thrive, that trauma did not have to define you. Olivia's descendants pointed to photographs of her and traced the familiar bump, proud of what it represented, proud of the woman who had worn it with dignity and grace. And in quiet moments when the great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren sat on the porch of the old ranch house, now renovated and expanded but still standing, they swore they could still feel the love that Tobias and Olivia had built there. It was in the wood and the stone, in the land and the sky. It was in the very air itself, a testament to the truth that love, real love, never truly dies. It just changes form, becoming memory and legend and inspiration for those who come after. The story of Olivia Vaughn, who became Olivia Whitmore, who ran away from violence and found love, who learned to look people in the eye and claim her own power, lived on long after she was gone. And somewhere, in whatever place souls go when bodies wear out, Tobias and Olivia were together still, holding hands and watching sunsets, proving that some promises really do last forever. Their love story, born in pain and fear but flowering into something beautiful and enduring, became the foundation upon which generations built their lives. It taught their descendants about resilience and courage, about the healing power of love, and about the importance of choosing partners who lift you up rather than tear you down. It taught them that you could survive almost anything if you had someone who truly saw you, who loved you not despite your scars, but because of everything you had overcome to earn them. In the end, the greatest legacy Tobias and Olivia Whitmore left behind was not the ranch or the land or even the family name. It was the simple, profound lesson that love, when it is real and true and patient, can heal even the deepest wounds, that you can start with nothing but pain and fear, and through determination and connection and refusing to give up on yourself or each other, build something that lasts not just a lifetime, but generations. And every time someone in the family faced their own darkness, their own Herman Pritchard moment, they remembered great-grandmother Olivia, who had run away with nothing but $43 and a broken nose, and had built an empire of love. They remembered great-grandfather Tobias, who had seen a broken girl and told her to look at him whenever she wanted, who had given her permission to take up space in the world. And they found the courage to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep believing that better days were coming, because if Olivia and Tobias could do it, so could they. That was the real gift, the real inheritance, not money or land or possessions, but the knowledge that love conquers all, that healing is possible, and that sometimes the greatest adventures start with the simple act of looking someone in the eye and choosing to trust again.